Mr. Oetjen, thanks very much for joining us here, and I'm looking forward to have a small discussion with you about the decarbonization of the mobility sector. But before we start, a very general thing. As a political newcomer to Brussels, I stand like an ox in front of the mountains when facing the complicated decision-making processes in the EU. And I'm wondering why engineers are so little heard these days. Are we, with our dry, fact-oriented thinking and instinct species somehow, that we are no longer needed? What's your view on this?
Well, first of all, thanks for the invitation to this discussion, dear Jens. Happy to be here. No, surely we need engineers, and normally every political decision should be fact-based and scientifically proven, because this is the way I see the job of as politicians in order to find good solutions. But I mean, when you are in a political situation where you try to find a consensus among different partners with different views, facts are not the only component in the equation. So it's about how is the popular opinion, how is the approach of the different political parties. I mean, sometimes you derive from facts, and this is clearly the case as well in decarbonization. And you have special interest from different point of views, so from different industry stakeholders and parties. So that's why, I mean, we need scientists and engineers, but they don't have the only say. Let's say it like this.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. Absolutely right. Well, let's look ahead a little bit, and let's take a look at the Paris 1.5 degree target. And as you know, we have to achieve a decarbonization pretty fast. And what I would like to know is, what's your view regarding the technologies that should be used? Should we put all eggs into one basket, so pushing only one technology further, or should we make use of different opportunities, which we of course have in Europe? What's your view on this?
Well, I'm a liberal centrist, and my view on this is that we should clearly not single out one technology, but that we should give the engineers, in this case, the possibility to develop solutions for decarbonizing the sector, the transport sector. And so I would not say that we should go only electric, for example, but that we should use all different possibilities of decarbonizing individual transport. And this is my approach and the approach of my party, which is not shared by everyone, to be very clear. Some colleagues in the European Parliament and the national parliaments think that they should decide on how the transport should look like, and should decide on which technology should be used. But this is not my approach, because I think that it's at the end, if we want the best solutions, it's not politicians that will find the best solutions, but the best solutions will be found by innovation, that is done by engineers. And so I would say we should be technology neutral. We should give a name, and this aim is clearly set out in the Paris Agreement. This aim is described in the Green Deal proposal of the Commission. But we should not say, we should describe a way how to get there with different steps, but not decide about the technology, because I'm not in the position as a politician that I can know which is the best technology available in 2035, 2040, 2045. I don't know what will happen. And it's good so that I don't know what will happen, because innovation comes from people that are not politicians, but that are working on the ground and that are working in the sector.
Totally right. I agree. If we narrow the path and focus only on one technology, then we probably will have not that competition you just mentioned, but the legislation, or let's say where the legislation currently goes, or is already, the CO2 fleet emission legislation only focuses on tailpipe emissions, and this narrows the path, of course. Although there are other possibilities, like what we are talking about today, like the use of methane, especially biomethane from agricultural waste, which would mean not even going close to zero CO2, but also going even below zero. And we would miss this opportunity if we don't keep it open, if we don't have an equal playing field for the different technologies. And you're totally right. Today, we don't know what engineers will develop in 3 or 5 years. Absolutely right. But right now, we are stuck with this tank-to-wheel approach. And do you see any chance to keep this competition open? And by which legislative means can we keep this competition open, Mr. Oetjen?
Well, first, I agree with you that the tailpipe approach is the real problem of this. We don't have a life cycle assessment, but if you want to be clear and to know which is the real impact on the environment, you should do a life cycle assessment. But we're not doing this. We're looking at the tailpipe only, and this approach clearly singles out the all other options than, or does not make possible all other options than the battery electric car. We are in a situation where we are facing the fact that the manufacturers of the vehicles decide one after the other that they will stop with the internal combustion engine. We had this by Audi, for example, and the others will follow. The whole Volkswagen group will go this direction. So we're kind of in a trap, because me supporting alternative solutions, I'm faced by with colleagues that say, yeah, but the manufacturers don't want this. They will not produce the cars you want to see on the roads. So this is a kind of trap in which we are. And at the moment, I don't see a real, in the European Parliament, I'm saying, I don't see a majority that would switch from tailpipe approach to a life cycle assessment. But the European Parliament is only one of the legislators, so we don't know what the Council will do, because I think that they will be more open to other solutions than battery electric cars, because this has a huge impact on the whole automotive sector, and with the whole value chain and tens of thousands of employees in all countries of Europe, not only in my home country Germany, but especially in Eastern European countries. This has a huge impact. So we will see what will be the result at the end. But at the moment, it's not clear. To be very frank, it's not clear what will be the outcome.
Yeah. You just mentioned that the vehicle manufacturers step by step go away from the ICE, and they are not promoting this anymore. They focus on battery electric vehicles, which is also when we talk about passenger cars, which is also from my point of view logical. If you take into account that the Chinese market is the biggest vehicle market in the world, you can imagine that the leading European car manufacturers have to stay competitive, and especially if a company like Tesla is having such a let me say such a success, although they are only making a profit since 1 year or so. It's logical that the vehicle manufacturers for passenger cars go to battery electric traction, but it's a different case when discussing about the heavy duty sector. Their real alternatives are not in sight. With a battery electric truck, you can only go, let's say, up to 4 of best case 500 kilometers. With a fuel cell propelled truck, if we have them in place, and this will also take years and years for infrastructure and for vehicles, you can maximum go, let's say, 800, 900 kilometers. So above that, which is covered today, for example, by diesel trucks, and which can be covered and is covered also by LNG trucks, you don't have a real technical alternative. So when it comes to heavy duty transport, we will have, or we have already, this discussion again. Maybe all passenger vehicle will be driven battery electric within the next 10, 15 years or so in Europe. But for the truck sector, I definitely don't see this. So we have to discuss this also. How can we make our legislative approach, and how do you see this? Is this under discussion? And maybe a second question, and somehow this is not threaten me a bit, but this impact from China, this importance of the Chinese market, and the dependencies on resources from outside of Europe regarding lithium, cobalt, and precious metals. Makes me a little bit afraid about future generations, how we can also tackle this problem. So both questions, heavy duty and resources for battery trucks. What's your view on this?
Well, first, clearly heavy duty is a different thing than the passenger cars and light vehicles. So the actual proposal for the legislation, the CO2 emission standards, are aiming the personal cars, but not the heavy duty part. And we had an interesting study that has been presented in the Transport Committee in the European Parliament, where we talked about heavy duty. And for me, it's important that I mean, this is clearly the question of the functioning of the internal market of the European Union. If we are able to do transportation on long distance by trucks, because you cannot reach all parts of Europe in the same way by train, and you don't have the capacity on the railroad. So we clearly need long distance heavy duty solutions, and there electricity is part of the solution, but not the only solution that is possible. It's interesting, by the way, if you discuss with manufacturers on this issue. A couple of years ago, they clearly said, yes, we need battery electric trucks will not happen, or will happen to a very small amount. Now they are changing as well, because there's innovation, and they have better trucks, better technology, and now they say that they can approximately 60% can be done by battery electric driven trucks. I don't know if this is true, but this is the estimation of those manufacturers. But at the end, we will need other solutions as well, and we cannot say that we don't take those solutions. And especially if you look to certain regions, I mean, clearly, I have a colleague from Sweden And he tells me, if you want to, there's mining, and there's there's a lot of forestry, and they bring timber on for long distance, and he clearly says battery electric will not work when there's minus 15 degrees. The battery electric driven truck will not work properly and has not the distance that is needed. So clearly we need other solutions, and I think there's everybody sees this and wants those alternative solutions as well. And clearly, bioLNG is one of the solutions that should be used on this. Concerning raw materials, and your question, I mean, this is, one might say, even philosophical question. Should we go this way without having the appropriate resources and the appropriate access to those resources? And clearly, the world is interdependent, and we have a lot of technologies where we start to depend on China. And this goes clearly against the strategy of the European Union to be, let's say, autonomous, or kind of saying able to tackle those questions on our own without being dependent on China, and we are not at the moment. So this is clearly a question for the future. This is an ecological question, by the way, as well, because if you see how those raw materials are produced, this is not very funny. And this has clear impacts on environment, but as well on workers' rights that are working in those mines in least developed countries, etc. So there's a lot to do on this issue, and clearly the battery electric world is not as bright as it is described at the moment.
And keeping this in mind, what you just said, the combination on the technology field is definitely a good proposal. And I think we don't have any problem if in 20, 30 years or so everything is propelled electric, as long as this is also a sustainable solution and keeps also the competition alive, I would say. But then if we want to keep the competition alive, then we have to talk also about the infrastructure. And there, I'm still a newbie in Brussels, I have to say, regarding the infrastructure for alternative fuels. You call it AFIR, this legislation. Well, this is let me say, a divided Europe, so to speak. There are some countries with excellent infrastructure, and there are other countries, hey, you can hardly get from Portugal, come from Portugal up to the Baltics with an LNG propelled truck. It's definitely not possible. And even if you have bio-LNG, you can go carbon neutral, you can't do it. So I have the impression we have a Europe of different speeds. And this is also in regard of a charging station as well. So wouldn't you agree that we have to develop the infrastructure further and keep competition alive, especially for the heavy truck sector?
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, we have the proposal of the new AFIR regulation, so a regulation on alternative fuels infrastructure on the table. We're discussing it at the moment, and clearly we have to meet the expectations of the population and of the industry as well. And as I said, transport is an essential part of the functioning of the internal market, and if you aren't able to go from A to B inside Europe with your vehicle, this is a problem, and this problem has to be fixed. And clearly, there are standards that have to be set out in the AFIR, which is has the same importance for battery electric cars than for other alternative modes of propulsion, and we need on the one hand, clear aims that have to be met by the member states, because it's not the European Union building charging stations alongside the highways. This is the member states' competence. They have to do it. And this is the same for the alternative fuels. So we need a kind of grid in Europe where you can use this properly, and where especially for electric charging station, you have a clear transparency as well on the price, and where you can as a customer you can use your credit card in order to pay, and you don't need to be affiliated to one or the other company. So clearly there are standards that have to be set in this regulation. These standards should aim to uniform the use of alternative fuels over the whole continent, over the whole of the European Union. But I agree with you that at the moment we have different speeds, and that especially in the eastern countries, you don't have this network as it is needed at the moment. And even in western parts of Europe, this is not. There are clearly some front-runner states, but this is not the case in all the member states. So there's a lot to do. And for me, the most important, what we can do on the European level, is to say what has to be done when. And then it's up to the member states to do this.
Excellent. And as I see it, we of course have a responsibility for our industries to stay competitive, as we are also living on exporting high quality products to the rest of the world. But on the other hand, we have also a social responsibility also for our friends in the eastern parts of Europe, and we also have to take this into account. There has to be a good balance from my perspective. Mr. Oetjen, I asked you, please, you want to say something?
No, I wanted to say that, I mean, sometimes we're talking from a very, we're looking at this from a very Western point of view, where I mean, kind of every couple of years there's a new car, and you have the cars that are with the internal combustion engine they will disappear from the streets in Germany, for example, or in the Netherlands, or I don't know, but they will not disappear from the European Union because they are used elsewhere. The lifespan of those vehicles is longer than a lot of people think. And clearly we need all those alternatives as well for the existing fleet, and for the cars that are on the market. So and same by the way, for trucks that are on the roads today, and will be on the roads for a long time still. So sometimes this, by the way, this different views from a Western European point of view and an Eastern European point of view, they do not meet properly in the discussions, because everybody comes from his standpoint and thinks the world is like he sees it, but there are different views and different worlds that are existing in the European Union.
It's interesting. I can tell you that some of my member companies, I'm talking to persons from the eastern part of Europe, they are pretty often telling me they have the impression that we are more focused on the western part of Europe, and what Western European countries are saying. So the persons from there is regarded as more important as what people from the eastern parts of Europe are telling us. So this is also definitely a topic within our association. Mr. Oetjen, you know that you have in front of you, or in front of your screen, somebody who has 30 years experience in the vehicle industry, and I ask you now, I've asking you many questions. Maybe you have a question to my side, so this is the opportunity to ask also a question to the car guy. If you like to.
I want to know from the that's a good idea. I want to know from the car guy, what the car guy would expect to be the mode of transport people are using and goods and transport companies are using in 2050. So two options. First, for the individual customer, the normal people like me driving a car, how will they move forward? So what will they use? And what are transport companies using as trucks in 2050?
This is a pretty easy question. It seems to be, but it's very complicated to answer. Well, all our companies, our European car manufacturers, our vehicle manufacturers are acting globally. And it's not the case that we will see everywhere the battery electric traction on this planet. This is not achievable within the next decades. But nevertheless, a company like you mentioned, the Volkswagen AG, but we could also mention Stellantis or other big European companies. They are active globally. So they have to have their engineering capacity on many technological fields. So, and if you are also active in China and you have to go this Chinese Silk Road, you probably will not go with a truck on this Chinese Silk Road. They are planning with a battery electric truck. You will propel your vehicle there with a hydrocarbon like LNG, or maybe still diesel, which we have to replace, of course, the fossil diesel by a renewable fuel. This is definitely the case. So this is what a car manufacturer has to take into account. Then I mentioned already China as the biggest market supports battery electric vehicles, but they are open to other solutions. So a vehicle manufacturer has to take this into account. On the other hand, he needs a strong home base for his technology, and this is why European car manufacturers are saying, okay, then let's get rid of the ICE. We can reduce our workforce. We can do something for our share prices if we concentrate on one technology. Fine with us, but we need your support from the political side. So this is this, let me say, power balancing. Unfortunately, I cannot give, this sounds a little bit like a politician, but I cannot give you a clear answer. But keep in mind, the propulsion world will stay colorful, and we will still use also different technologies in 2050. No doubt about that.
I mean, the future is unclear, and it's good like that. It's good like that. Because if we knew the future, this would be a very boring life. But my fear is more that the car manufacturers, that all that we have in place at the moment on R&D, on development, on innovation for the car manufacturers, that this will be exported to other countries. The car manufacturers will continue building vehicles with the internal combustion engine, but elsewhere. They will have the electric cars for the European market, and they will build the same cars with another propulsion for other markets. And we will lose the how to say the knowledge about this in a couple of years from now, and this is from my point of view one of the real problems. If you decide to go one direction and you say the others are not possible, you cannot go back one day, and this is worrying me because I don't think that it's wise to go only one way without having the option to go elsewhere.
Definitely right. And you lose also the young folks who is interested in studying a topic that is obviously not hip anymore. When you decide about studying something, you take a look at, oh, what's now a hot topic, then I go into this direction. And I find this also risky. And let's hope that we can keep the technological competition alive. And let's fight for this, and let's fight for alternative fuels to propel also the existing fleet in Europe, be it biomethane, be it e-fuels, be it, of course, electric. Okay, Mr. Oetjen, then many thanks for giving us the time to have this talk.
Thank you.
And much success, but stay healthy and have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Although within this COVID crisis, all the best for you in the upcoming discussion and for the next year.
All the best for you as well. Merry Christmas, and thank you for this discussion. And let's keep on fighting together for a real technology open approach on propulsion for vehicles. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Bye-bye.